Goodness sakes. Joe, I'm just going to let people into the room.
Okay.
And let me know when you're ready. It looks like we're live on YouTube and we are recording. Good evening, everyone. This is the public hearing for the expansion CON for Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps. This is being held by the Regional EMS Council of New York City. Our hearing officer this evening is Mr. Tim Hannigan. He will be running the meeting tonight. We have Clarissa. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your last name. Clarissa is our stenographer. So if you speak, if you're called upon to speak, make sure that you identify yourself, your name and what organization you are with, so that she can properly take the stenographic record. And with that, I will hand this over to our hearing officer.
All right. Thank you, Marie. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the this virtual public hearing. The proceeding will now come to order. The time is 6:06 p.m. This proceeding, as many of you know, is a public hearing in the matter of the application of the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps, which seeks to expand its certificate of need to include the communities of Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, and Kew Gardens within the boundaries of the 102nd Precinct in Queens and Community Board Number 9. My name is Tim Hannigan. I'm an attorney from Del Mar, New York. I am serving as the hearing officer for this hearing in accordance with New York State Department of Health Policy Statement 0606. As hearing officer, I will moderate this proceeding and ensure that the hearing process follows generally accepted procedures. Candidly, I will tell you that at the time 0606 was crafted, I'm sure it was not anticipated that we would all be doing this remotely. So we will follow generally accepted Zoom and COVID procedures for purposes of the hearing. Following this hearing, I will prepare a report setting forth findings of fact for the Regional Emergency Medical Services Council of New York City and its Ambulance Committee. This hearing is being held by the Regional Emergency Medical Services Council of New York City pursuant to Article 30 of the New York State Public Health Law and is being conducted in accordance with Policy Statement 0606. The purpose of this hearing is to provide a technical review and objective evaluation of the applicant's statement of need, as well as any other testimony presented. It is the intent of this process to obtain input from the general public and all who may use, provide, pay for, or participate in the EMS system. As Marie noted, a stenographic and video record of this proceeding is being made and also broadcast live simultaneously via YouTube. The testimony taken at this hearing, as well as all exhibits received, will constitute the record in this matter. We have several members of the Regional Council's Ambulance Committee present this evening. If I'd ask you if you're present, just to wave so the applicant can see you. There are multiple members present here on screen. Good evening, all Ambulance Council members. All testimony and presentations by either the applicant, any persons in support, or any persons in opposition should be directed to this committee. Any questions that the applicant has or the speaker has should be directed to this committee or to me. The committee members can raise questions individually during the presentation, either by the applicant or any members of the public, whether in support or in opposition. And the committee members are also invited to confer or collectively direct questions to the applicant or a particular speaker as needed. To support the pending application, the applicant bears the burden of proof for demonstration of public need. Public need is defined in Policy Statement 0606 as the demonstrated absence, reduced availability, or an inadequate level of care in ambulance or emergency medical service available to a geographical area which is not readily correctable through the reallocation or improvement of existing resources. In this case, the application was deemed complete on January 25th, 2021. As a matter of housekeeping, the redacted application, redacted for personal identifying information of officers and directors of the applicant, has been marked and it is incorporated into this proceeding as Exhibit 1. a copy of the legal notice of public hearing, which was published prior to this date, together with supporting affidavit and notice of the application made by registered or certified mail by the regional council to the chief executive officers of all general hospitals, ambulance services, and municipalities operating within the same county or counties where the applicant seeks to operate has been marked as Exhibit 2. The letter of fitness and competency from the Department of Health attesting to the applicant's fitness and competency to operate the proposed service remains pending. That determination, when final, will be incorporated into this proceeding as Exhibit 3. I note that the applicant, as recently as last March, I believe it was 2019, was found fit and competent by the Department of Health, but their review with respect to this application is not yet complete, but will be incorporated. And again, that will be Exhibit 3. The timeline prepared by Marie Diglio, entitled Account of Events, is incorporated into this proceeding as Exhibit 4. The applicant will share a PowerPoint presentation this evening. That presentation, which was transmitted to the regional council and to me prior to the public hearing, is received and will be incorporated into the proceeding as Exhibit 5. The memorandum and Exhibits A through J, transmitted by attorney Jeffrey Reisner on behalf of Forest Hills Volunteer Ambulance Corps, was received by the regional council and myself prior to the time of the public hearing. It is received and it will be incorporated into this proceeding as Exhibit 6. For matters of housekeeping and generally how it's going to go here, we will commence with a presentation by Kevin Mahoney, a representative for the applicant. Mr. Mahoney is here and present. Mr. Mahoney, if you want to wave, let everybody know that it's you and you can hear us. Excellent. Once Mr. Mahoney finishes his presentation on behalf of the applicant, the floor will be open to those individuals who pre-registered with Marie to speak. Depending upon the number of people that we have a list of maybe about 15 or so. At this time, I won't cap in terms of time, the amount of time that someone has to speak. If it looks like we're going to be going on, 10 o'clock tonight, I'll shorten that a bit and reserve the opportunity to do so. But at this time, I ask that persons direct their comments solely to the issue of public need, which is the only question before the council and the ambulance committee, and focus their presentation on that question. At the conclusion of the public forum, the applicant, Mr. Mahoney, will be afforded the opportunity, if he chooses, for additional time for the limited purpose of rebuttal. Such time is for the limited purpose of contradicting or disproving statements or submissions offered by persons opposing the application. And the time allotted for rebuttal and the subject matter for rebuttal, Mr. Mahoney, is designed to be limited solely for you to respond to arguments made in opposition to the application. I will now call the names of the individuals who are registered to speak. At the time I call a particular speaker up to speak during the public hearing comment, I will also state the name of the person who is next in line to speak so that you can prepare your virtual background or get your AirPods ready or whatever you need to do in order to participate. And I ask that the on-deck speaker please be prepared at the time that the speaker before you concludes. I will now recite the names of the speakers in the order in which they are to participate. First, Kevin Mahoney on behalf of the applicant. Then we will go to Edward Wendell from the Woodhaven Historical Society. He will be followed by the Honorable Joseph Adabo, Jr. He will be followed by the Honorable Jennifer Rajkumar. She will be followed by the Honorable Robert Holden. He will be followed by the Honorable Eric Ulrich. Mr. Ulrich submitted a written statement in lieu of being testifying this evening. His written statement will be received by the council, and the hearing officer will be incorporated into this proceeding as though he was here in person tonight. We will then hear from Kenichi Wilson, Chair, Queens Community Board number 9. Then Andrew Combs, Director, Woodhaven to Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Then Joe Campisi, President, Middle Village Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Ryan Gunning, former Chief, Glendale Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Lou Greco, Vice Chair, District 4, New York State Volunteer Ambulance and Rescue Association. Daryl Maslish, President, Jamaica Estates, Holliswood, South Bayside Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Antoine Robinson, Commanding Officer. James Pointer, Chief of Operations, Bedford Stuyvesant Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Martin Kolberg, Woodhaven Business Improvement District, Stephen Fort, Woodhaven Residents Block Association, Vance Barber, community member, Christopher DeLuca, Chief, Lindenwood VAC. Mr. DeLuca has noted that his testimony is intended to be in opposition. And finally, we'll conclude with Jeffrey Reisner, attorney, Forest Hills VAC. Mr. Reisner has also indicated that his comments will be offered in opposition. Is there anyone else whose names I did not read off that wishes to speak tonight? All right, seeing none, we will begin. If there is, please go to the chat function and contact Joe. Okay.
I have to give them the ability to unmute themselves.
Okay.
So participants, I've given you the ability to unmute yourselves. If you wish to speak, you may unmute yourself now and declare.
Mr. Ranieri?
Go ahead.
Are you going to be able to put up the PowerPoint, or am I going to be able to put it up?
Yes, at the time when you're ready to, when it's ready for you to present, I will make you a co-host, Kevin, and at that time you'll be able to do a screen share.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Ranieri, I'm hearing none as far as other persons who wish to speak, so we'll proceed. Carissa, I have the list of speakers and the names and pronunciations and spelling, so I will send those to you post-hearing for your inclusion in the transcript. All right, Mr. Mahoney, hearing none, I will allow you to proceed with the presentation on behalf of the applicant, Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps.
Thank you, sir. Joe, when you're ready, I'll be able to share it.
Yep. I just set you up as a co-host.
Thank you. Can you see just the PowerPoint, or?
So on our screens, we're able to see both you as well as the PowerPoint. At least I am.
Okay. Is it just the PowerPoint, or you see the slides on the side also?
We see the PowerPoint and the slides. Now you are in presentation mode.
Okay. Beautiful. All right. Good evening. I would like to thank everyone for attending and participating at this evening's public hearing for the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps. I especially like to thank the hearing officer Hannigan, the ambulance committee members, and staff of the New York City Regional EMS Council, who was able to facilitate this process along while being busy with all the COVID initiatives going on. We believe our application has covered all bases required to demonstrate the obvious public need for an expansion. Tonight, I intend to summarize our application, utilizing a short PowerPoint so the members of the Regional EMS Council can make an informed decision for what is best for the region. I intend to keep our testimony short and request that all of our speakers only provide testimony that lasts about 3 minutes and 52 seconds or less. We understand everyone's time is precious. Tonight, we take another step forward to revitalizing the way community-based volunteer ambulance organizations need to do business in our region. Tonight, we are here to expand our services into the Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, and Kew Garden communities, an area that was previously served by the Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps. This expansion area's geopolitical boundaries are within Community Board 9. To continue the spirit of transparency through this process, our intention is only to regain the territory that was previously served by the Woodhaven Richmond Hill VAC. Having been through 2 transfer of operating territories in the last 2 years, we are aware that the New York State Department of Health requests territories in our region be defined and conterminous by geopolitical boundaries. This has been defined by using New York City community boards or NYPD precinct boundaries. We have zero intention on serving any area outside of what Woodhaven Richmond Hill VAC used to serve. The New York City REMSCO, under New York State Department of Health Policy Statement 0606, has the ability to work with the New York State Department of Health to adjust or clarify the boundaries as needed to meet our goal. The Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps is organized as a 501c3 not-for-profit organization in New York State since 1974. In 2018, RVAC was able to start the process of merging operations with our neighboring volunteer ambulance corps. We executed the transfer of operating authority for the Middle Village Volunteer Ambulance Corps in January of 2019. And in May of 2019, we executed the transfer of operating authority from the Glendale Volunteer Ambulance Corps. A merger of operations of volunteer ambulance services on this level was unheard of in the New York City region. It's no secret that the state of volunteerism throughout New York State is in trouble, and that there are many agencies within the New York City region that are struggling today. RVAC acknowledges the familiar status quo of isolated business models that have not been successful and have led to many agencies being dissolved or being barely active. It has become clear to RVAC, since the execution of the operational mergers, value is added through consolidation and centralization. This application is an intentional attempt to continue RVAC's strategic momentum to consolidate operations and organizational direction by restoring community-based ambulance services to the communities of Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, and Kew Gardens. In 2017, the New York City Regional EMS Council petitioned the New York State Department of Health to restore Woodhaven VAC certificate to operate. The regional council's request was to no avail, but it did show that this region already believes a community-based volunteer ambulance service is needed in the Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, and Kew Garden areas. In 2019, the board of directors of the Woodhaven, Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps entered into an agreement with the Ridgewood VAC seeking to restore a community-based volunteer ambulance service. The Woodhaven, Richmond Hill VAC recognized the vision and direction that RVAC possessed, having recently successfully executed 2 mergers of volunteer ambulance services. If the DOH had restored the certificate to operate, we would not be here today. We would simply just be submitting another transfer of operating authority. We're here today because this is the mechanism put into place by the New York State Department of Health for us to restore services back to those communities. Despite the challenges with COVID and the pandemic, RVAC was able to leverage technology to communicate with all of the elected officials that represent the communities of Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, and Kew Gardens. We're proud to say that we have support from every single elected official that represents our proposed area. And you will hear from some of them tonight showing their support. I would like to thank them for their time meeting with us and for being with us tonight. Stressing to the point that we are a community-based volunteer ambulance service, we believe it is not only important, but an obligation to involve as many stakeholders from the community in this process. We would like to thank Community Board 5, Community Board 9, Whitecroft Heights Medical Center, the Greater Woodhaven Development Corporation, the Woodhaven Residents Block Association, the Woodhaven Cultural and Historical Society, the Woodhaven BID, and the 104 Precinct Civilian Observation Patrol for all of their support. You will hear from some of these groups tonight. Lastly, we pride ourselves with having a strong relationship with other EMS agencies and other community-based volunteer ambulance corps. We'd like to thank the New York State Volunteer Ambulance Rescue Association, District 4 and District 18, the Woodhaven, Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps, Jamaica Estates, Holliswood, South Bayside Volunteer Ambulance Corps, Bedford-Stuyvesant Volunteer Ambulance Corps, Broad Channel Volunteer Fire Department Ambulance Corps, and the West Hamilton Beach Fire Department and Ambulance. You will hear from a few of them tonight, and we thank them for their support. I'd like to once again thank everyone who has taken the time out of their day and their lives to be part of this process. We look forward to continue to work with the New York City Regional EMS Council, the New York State Department of Health, and the entire EMS community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. Do any members of the ambulance committee or the regional council present have any questions for Mr. Mahoney? If you do so, please indicate so to Joe so that he can unmute you.
If you have any questions, you can put up your hand on use the raise hand function in the in the application.
All right.
There are nobody's hands raised at this
None?
time.
Okay. Mr. Roney, I have a few questions for you.
Yes,
With
sir.
respect to the projected call volume that you indicated on form 3777, it indicated that you anticipate there being 1,200 total calls, 11,000 or 11,000, excuse me, 1,000 emergency, 200 non-emergency. Can you discuss with the committee what the basis was for that call volume, whether it was obtained from Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, or elsewhere, and then why you anticipate that number of calls going forward?
It was a number formulated based off of the activity of the ambulance corps, of what we previously did, putting out the additional ambulance and responding based on, the volunteers' availability. So just based off of the organizational history, we estimated that amount. Obviously, anybody would want to be able to respond to as many calls as possible and be open all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just based off of our past activity.
Okay. With respect to the number of resources you have now that you listed 4 on the application, are you able to respond and fully be operational in this area with the existing resources that your agency has on hand, or would you need to acquire further resources in order to successfully deliver the service in this area?
So we currently own 4 ambulances, 3 of them are in service. Once this application is approved, we have a 4th ambulance that we would put in service just for this area only.
Okay, so you would have one dedicated resource for this particular area to which you seek expansion. Okay.
Yeah, very similar to when each ambulance corps operated independently. They had one ambulance. Now we're just operationally under one, and we have one ambulance that are going to be serviced each of those areas. Okay.
And with that, the one ambulance that you indicated, that's included in the 4 total, correct? That you listed?
Correct, sir.
Okay, is that would be a 24-hour resource for this area?
We generally operate 24 hours, 7 days a week, dependent volunteer availability.
Okay, all right. I also wanted to ask a question regarding the New York State Department of Health. You referenced that this was the DOH mechanism for restoring service in the area. Did the Department of Health discuss transfer of operating authority with you, or direct you that you had to apply to this through this avenue in order to obtain an operating certificate?
There was a multitude of events with the previous administration of the Woodhaven Richmond Hill VAC, in which their certificate of need was revoked. Mm-hmm. And the regional council did request and petition the state to reissue it. And the Department of Health at that time did not reissue it. And since then, the corporation of the Woodhaven Richmond Hill VAC has, entered into a binding agreement with us. And one of the parts of the agreement is to reapply to restore ambulance services in those communities. Okay, so an effort was made by your agency to basically allow the existing certificate of operating authority to remain intact and be transferred to you. DOH said no, and your alternative was apply for an expansion. Is that correct? A negative. We weren't involved early on in the process. Okay. There were other entities and other people trying to help Woodhaven, which didn't have a positive result. And once they saw what we were doing with the other ambulance corps, they saw the positive nature of stuff we were doing and that was actually working. They sat down and met with us. It was already the petition from the regional council to restore their ambulance certificate was already sent up and it wasn't restored. So we entered into an agreement after that had happened. So it wasn't synonymous. Okay. All right. Very good. That's all the questions I have for you, Mr. Mahoney. Anything else from either members of the ambulance committee or the council at large?
Jim Downey, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Downey.
In the application package from Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps. There's a map on page 22 of 72 of the application package. Does that accurately reflect the areas that you want to acquire? I believe in the lower left-hand corner of the map, it covers part of Ozone Park. Is the map accurate?
The map is accurate with the verbiage that we use that's required by 0606, which requires geopolitical boundaries to be used. If we wouldn't submit our application following the requirements of 0606, that our application would be deemed incomplete because of a technicality. As I mentioned in my opening statement, the Regional Council and the Ambulance Committee has the authority of the 0606 to go and change that to make sure we don't have overlap in territories, which I know you're going to refer to, Jim, with Lindenwood.
That is correct. So the lower left-hand corner does include Ozone Park in addition to Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, and Kew Gardens.
Yes, and if this region would like to adjust the map to reflect the exact old service area of the Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps, it is within their purview to do that. But if we did not submit our application following the guidelines outlined in 0606, then we could have been deemed incomplete. Like I mentioned, it is no intention to overlap areas with the Lindenwood Volunteer Ambulance Corps. We are just trying to regain the area that the Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps used to provide service to.
Does
that clarify everything for you, Mr. Downey?
It sort of clarifies things, but it still leaves the overlap in existence, which was never covered by Woodhaven, Richmond Hill VAC.
I think I just explained exactly why it's on there, because it's within the geopolitical boundary of Community Board 9.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Downey, assuming yours was answered, are there any other questions for the applicant at this time? Joe, I'm not seeing any on my end. Do you see any on yours?
Nope, I do not see any on my end.
All right, with that, we will close the portion of the public hearing that is reserved for the applicant's presentation and turn to the public comment. The first name on the list we'll go to is the Honorable Eric Ulrich. Is Mr. Ulrich present?
Negative. I mentioned to you before, I'm sorry, that he had a scheduling conflict. I'm going to submit.
Okay, correct. Yep, correct. I made a note of that. You are correct. All right, the Honorable Robert Holden. Is Councilman Holden present? Good evening.
I'm here. Good evening. You hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Councilman Robert Holden, and it's great to see my colleagues, State Senator Joe Adabo and Assemblywoman Rajkumar, as well as all the civic and community leaders at this hearing. I'm also a member of the Health Committee in the New York City Council, so I'm here tonight to express my full support for the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps' expansion into the Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, and Kew Gardens area. There is a public need for restoring a community-based ambulance service to this area. In fact, there is a desperate need, especially in these days of the pandemic. An ambulance response time to most emergencies must be as fast as possible. We all know that. And there is a growing senior population in the district, and that must be served, and it's going to continue to grow. So the Ridgewood VAC has been working with the Board of Directors of the Woodhaven, Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps to reestablish their services, as you heard. They have done extensive outreach to the communities affected and have met with elected officials, civic leaders, bids, and associations. They are to be commended for their outstanding work in serving most of my district. Ridgewood VAC has full support of the civic associations in this area, which you'll hear from later in this hearing. Ridgewood VAC has also been transparent and has kept everyone in the community updated throughout this lengthy process. So again, I just want I don't want to go on too long because I know there's a lot of speakers, but I fully support their application to expand into this area and will do everything possible to see that done. And they'll also have my full support in funding also. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Holden. Do any members of the ambulance committee or the council at large have any questions for Councilmember Holden? I'm seeing none. Joe, any requests?
I do not see any hands up, and there are no questions on the live stream.
Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
Very
Thank
good. Thank you, Councilmember Holden. We'll next turn to Senator Adabo. Is Senator Adabo on?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Tim,
Thank you.
thank you very much, Tim, and I want to thank the Regional Council for allowing me to speak tonight, and of course for their efforts throughout the year. Thank you very much to the council. I want to say thank you to both applicants because I am friends of both, and both for Ridgewood and Forest Hills. I want to say thank you very much for the years of dedicated service. Appreciate what you've done in the community, always being there. But I want to be clear. I have the unique position of representing both Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps and the Forest Hills Volunteer Ambulance Corps. And so I am fans of both. Yes, the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps has gotten a letter of support from me, and we had a great conversation last week. I wrote that letter before I knew and understood that Forest Hills was also applying for the same area. And so I told my friends at Ridgewood, to be fair, I am not going to play sides here. I support both. I think both are credible. I think both can do a fine job. So I'm going to be neutral for the most part, supporting both. But my message here is clear to the council. I truly appreciate the entertaining the idea and really hope it's the end game that the areas of Ridgewood and Woodhaven and Kew Gardens get the services that they need and certainly deserve from either of these volunteer ambulance corps. I've lived in Ozone Park all my life, and I know these areas well. And we are talking about wood frame homes, older. We're talking about mixed use homes. And these areas are certainly deserving and need this service. So whether we're talking about, I believe a 2015 fire on 98th Street in Woodhaven, where a row of wood homes caught on fire and the ambulance corps was needed there, or whether we're talking about the most recent Valentine's Day fire in Richmond Hill on Jamaica Avenue. The bottom line is these areas are, in Kew Gardens included, are in dire need of service. And so, again, I do appreciate the council's entertaining both applications and do hope that the residents of these areas that I represent are served well by either of these credible, longstanding, certainly deserving ambulance corps. Again, to my friends at Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps and to my friends at Forest Hills Ambulance Corps. I look forward to working with you both, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much to the council.
Thank you, Senator. Do any members of the ambulance committee or the council at large have any questions for Senator Adabo? All right, I'm hearing none or seeing none. Joe, any indications on your end?
Negative. There are no hands raised, and nobody's put anything in the chat.
All right, so I'm the hearing officer, but Joe's in charge. So if Joe says no, we're good to move on. Senator, thank you very much. We'll next turn to thank you. We'll turn to Assemblymember Rajkumar.
Thank you. Good evening to the New York City Regional EMS Council, and I'm here to speak in support of the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps, RVAC, and its plan to expand volunteer EMS services to Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, and Kew Gardens. I am the New York State Assemblywoman for District 38 here in South Queens, and my district covers the areas of RVAC's application, including Ridgewood, Woodhaven, and Richmond Hill. I live and work in Woodhaven, where my district office is, and I can tell you that Woodhaven is underserved. Woodhaven would benefit from the robust volunteer EMS services. And that is why I was so pleased to learn of RVAC's application. Richmond Hill has also been historically underserved, and it has been the commitment of my office to ensure that Richmond Hill has the support and resources that it needs. RVAC and its spirit of volunteerism would be a most welcome addition to the neighborhood. I have met with the leadership of RVAC, Kevin Mahoney and his team, on a few occasions, and their connection to the community is evident, and impressive. The leadership of RVAC is passionate, dynamic, and civic-minded. In these difficult times, as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, that is exactly the type of civic-minded spirit that I support from my district and that we need as a community. The RVAC leadership has demonstrated to me that it understands the ethos of neighbor helping neighbor, and I am my brother's keeper. My own office has helped see the community through the COVID-19 pandemic, through support services in 5 languages, food drives to alleviate hunger, and other government services for my constituents. I would welcome RVAC into Woodhaven and Richmond Hill and know that they would be a valuable community partner. I am pleased to register my support for the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps expansion. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Rajkumar. Do any members of the Ambulance Committee or the Council have any questions for Assemblymember Rajkumar? Scrolling through here. I see none. Joe, any questions indicated for the Assemblywoman?
Negative.
No. All right. Thank you very much. We will next turn to, next up is Lou Greco. Is Mr. Greco on? Vice Chair, District Number 4.
Yes, sir.
You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, sir. My name is Louis Greco. I'm the Vice Chair of Nisvara District 4. It's the opinion of District 4 that the communities referred to in the application would be best served by the presence of a volunteer ambulance service. The applicant has reached out to the district leadership and asked for guidance on their application. It is the opinion of the district leadership that the applicant has demonstrated the need for community-based ambulance service in their application. That's all we have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Do any members of the Ambulance Committee or the Council have any questions for Mr. Greco? All right. Seeing none. Joe, any comments indicated on your end?
Negative.
No. All right. We will proceed then with Mr. Edward Wendell, Woodhaven Historical Society. Mr. Wendell, are you on?
Yes, I am. I'm right here.
All right. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. And thank you to the Regional Council for affording me this opportunity to discuss the application to expand service into Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, and Kew Gardens. I'm the president of the Woodhaven Cultural Historical Society. For a number of years, I was president of the Woodhaven Residents Block Association. And through that, I had a very close relationship with the Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps, which served our community for over 50 years. They were a staple in our community, integrated with the Block Association, Historical Society, local electeds, our senior center. It was beyond just being a building and a physical presence here. They were a very close relationship with everyone that we had in the community that ended in the aftermath of the collapse of the building behind. Beyond the practical need for additional coverage and additional services in our community, it's always been our view that the local ambulance corps serve as ambassadors to the community for all of the EMTs and ambulance corps. And more than once over the past year, it's been noted amongst different civic groups and leadership that this past year, locally would have looked a lot different had we had a fully serviced ambulance corps working here in our community. In advance of this meeting, I did have the pleasure of meeting with the leadership of the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps. And we spoke about our past history and relationship with an ambulance corps here in Woodhaven, and discussed what any areas of potential concern we might have. And we left these meetings very comfortable and highly confident that the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps would serve as vibrant partners to the Woodhaven community. And we very enthusiastically support their application to expand their service into this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wendell. Do members of the Ambulance Committee or the Council have any questions for Mr. Wendell? Seeing none. Joe, any questions indicated on your end?
Negative.
No. All right. Thank you, Mr. Wendell. We'll next go to Kenichi Wilson, Chair, Queens Community Board number 9 is
Hey there, I'm sorry. I
That's okay.
actually just got my notes and I didn't think I was speaking till after 7 o'clock. So I'll try to do this on the fly. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mr. Kenichi Wilson. I'm chairperson of Community Board 9, and just to make a note, I'm actually a past member of the Woodhaven Ambulance Corps, Woodhaven Richmond Hill Ambulance Corps. Basically, our statement consists of Community Board 9 supports the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps application to the Regional Emergency Medical Service Council of New York City, Inc., and the New York State Department of Health for approval to expand its ability to operate basic life support on a volunteer EMS level to the adjacent communities of Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, Kew Gardens, Queens. The proposed expansion includes areas within Community Board 9 and within the confines of the New York City Police Department of the 102 precinct and part of 106. Community Board 9 acknowledges that this proposed area expansion will provide better community-based EMS resources. As the Ridgewood Ambulance Corps has an excellent service record since their inception in 1974. The proposed expansion goal to restore the type of service of community-based volunteer ambulance service that is currently missing and absent due to the void left by the Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps. The special services provided by Ridgewood VAC are provided to all individuals regardless of their ability to pay. This is a testament to their goal of being socially equitable. They are regularly active participants in the EMS response, non-emergency assistance, as well as local events and community outreach, often providing much needed emergency care and training, which cannot be replaced by any other municipal and/or commercial hospital systems. Therefore, Community Board 9 endorses the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps application and requests that they receive reciprocate approval and to expand their operation as indicated. Thank you in advance.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Do any members of the Ambulance Committee or the Regional Council have any questions for Mr. Wilson? I see none. Joe, any on your end?
Negative.
All right, Mr. Wilson, I wanted to ask you a question.
Sure.
Based on you're somewhat of an interesting person to speak this evening because you're affiliated with the prior service and you're also a leader in the community there. So obviously the question before our committee this evening and for the REMSCO eventually in March 23rd is, does public need exist in that area?
Oh, absolutely.
So my questions to you are on public need. Well, first, does it exist right now?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And
it's been a big hole. So I wear 3 different hats. I was a past member, so I recall the services that we provided. I'm a resident that misses the services and sees the holes there and the need as a community leader.
As far as the holes or the need that exists now, can you describe what you see as a community leader? Is it delayed response times? Is it unavailable ambulance? What are you seeing now with respect to need in that area?
I mean, it's all above, but it's also, you know, in areas like this, you know, sometimes how would you say, some people resist calling city services, wondering if they're going to be caught up with some sort of large bill, or not knowing if they're going to get the services provided. A lot of times, you know, volunteer ambulance corps or any volunteer service that's in the area that goes out and supports local community events, you get to meet them, you get to feel comfortable. You feel comfortable in knowing these individuals are volunteers in your neighborhood. And so when there is time of need, you feel free of reaching out to them for their services and you feel comfortable with them.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And any questions remaining for Mr. Wilson by any members of the Ambulance Committee or the Council? All right, seeing none. Joe, if you see none, we'll move right along to Mr. Andrew Combs, Director, Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps.
Thank you.
Mr. Combs, the floor is yours. Oh, Joe, I think he needs to unmute. Hold on one second, Mr. Combs.
Yeah, you need to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Andrew Combs. I'm presently the chairman of the board of directors for the Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps, Inc. And I'm here today to express my support for Ridgewood VAC's application to regain the area of Woodhaven, Richmond Hill. Everyone keeps saying Richmond Hill. It includes South Richmond Hill and Kew Gardens. The reason that I support this application wholeheartedly is that as Kevin had indicated, after it became obvious that we would not be able to recapture the certificate of need from the state following this series of unfortunate events that brought us to the point where it came up for losing it, that a decision really had to be made, and as to what way to proceed. And it became obvious that partnering up with Ridgewood, as Middle Village had done, as Glendale had done, that phrase that none of us are as strong as all of us are together, came into play. And it was their interest and our relationship with them, our close relationship with Mid-VAC and with Glendale VAC, including cross membership during this time, that we felt that our future, if we are to ever be able to return to servicing the area that we had serviced for over 50 years. And the fact that the series of unfortunate events saw us lose our ability to operate in that area doesn't negate the history that we had there and all of the good that came from it. And that good, it continues to exist to this day, only it requires our return presence there. We have entered into an agreement to join with them as one unified organization of the four ambulance corps. That after losing so much because of these unfortunate events, the building collapse and so forth, that we had no funding until we actually sold the property that we had. That money now is held in escrow by the state. And that represents all of the community's money that we previously serviced. And so those monies should, are with us, and they should not be parceled out. I think that we should be able to move forward in whole, so to speak, to regain those areas that we previously serviced, so that we can continue to do so, under the auspices of and in conjunction with this unified core that we are joining, that we have joined up with, and have been active participants in for the last almost 2 years now. And I don't know what's more to add to that, but I'd be happy to answer any questions people may have.
On that, Mr. Combs, we'll start with the ambulance committee and any members of the council. Are there any questions for Mr. Combs regarding his statements this evening? Joe, I'm seeing none. Do you see any on your end?
Negative.
Okay. Mr. Combs, I was just going to ask in follow up to the questions I asked to Mr. Wilson. You were present and heard what Mr. Wilson said. Is that fair? Okay.
Yes.
Do you agree with his statements as far as when your service lost its operating certificate, that a need was created in the area that was served by Wood?
I agree with Mr. Wilson in his assessment. I mean, as he was a member, I've been a member since 1972, so I have almost 50 years of service with the organization, and there was, I would say that the need has always existed, which is what we were able to help address, and our being absent from there and not being able to participate, just sort of exacerbates that. And as he indicated, it's on so many different levels that all of which speak to need in terms of not just emergency service, but there are other things particular to the area. Community event participation, a track for education and training people who want to go into that profession, and so forth. So I think that yes, I think the need certainly does exist there, and which is the basis for how volunteer ambulance services within the municipality of New York City operate. That there are multiple reasons why community-based volunteer ambulance services have a tremendous input into the community.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up questions from any members of the committee or the council? I'm seeing none. Joe, any questions indicated on your end?
Nope.
Nope. All right. Very well. We will move on then to Mr. Joe Campisi, President, Middle Village Volunteer Ambulance Corps.
Mr. Hannigan, Mr. Campisi is a scheduled conflict last minute. I'll submit his testimony to you to be part of the record.
Okay, very well. Mr. Campisi previously did indicate that he would speak this evening and that he would speak in support. I will accept a written statement from him in that regard. Mr. Mahoney, what's your timeline as far as submitting that to Marie and I?
I can get it to you right when we're done.
Okay, very good. Thanks. All right, with that, we'll move to Mr. Ryan Gunning, former chief, Glendale Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Is Mr. Gunningham here?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
There I am. How are you? Good evening, everybody. I want to thank the council for allowing me to speak. For those who don't know me, I am the past president chief of the Glendale Volunteer Ambulance Corps. I've had the honor of also serving as the chairman for New York City, the New York State Volunteer Ambulance and Rescue Association for District 4. And I was also a proud member of this board, REMSCO, many years in the past. So I've had the honor to serve most of the volunteer ambulance corps in the city. And as the president of Ridgewood, of Glendale rather, we've worked hand in hand with the Woodhaven Volunteer Ambulance Corps. As Andy Combs had stated, we had a joint membership. We allowed their members at one time to ride our ambulance. We had a mutual aid agreement with them, so we were helping them cover their area. They were helping cover ours. So we've had an extensive relationship in the past. There definitely is a need for public need in that area to continue an ambulance service. Unfortunately, they had the collapse of their building, and in the aftermath of their building, we were able to work together and continue that service as long as they could. With the merge of Glendale, Ridgewood, Middle Village, and hopefully Woodhaven into the expansion, that will continue to help serve those communities. I will submit a written report as well. I apologize. I'm stuck at work and did not have time to prepare. But I do support the merge, and there is definitely a public need.
Thank you, Mr. Gunning. Any questions for Mr. Gunning from either the ambulance committee or the regional council members? All right, seeing none. Joe, any indicated on your end?
No, not on this end.
Okay, very good. We'll go to Daryl Maslish, excuse me, President, Jamaica Estates, Holliswood, South Bayside Volunteer Ambulance Corps.
Mr. Hannigan, I have his testimony here. He's teaching an EMT class right now.
Okay, that's a good excuse. That's all right.
Yeah, so if you want, I could read it, or I could just make it part of the record to save everybody some time.
If you would like to submit it, we'll incorporate it as part of the record, similar to the statement from Mr. Ulrich, as well as the statement from Mr. Campisi.
Thank you.
You could send that to Marie and I, please. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, we'll next go to Antoine Robinson.
I don't think he's here.
Okay, I didn't see his name on the.
He is not in the room.
Okay. What I'll do is mark his name, and when we get to the end, I'll call again. If he's present, we'll let him speak at that time. If not, then we'll move on. Okay, we'll next go to James Pointer, Chief of Operations, Bedford Stuyvesant Volunteer Ambulance Corps.
Hello, I'm here.
Good evening. Thank you.
All right. Sorry, I can't have video right now, but I am here to fully support the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corp and their expansion into the Woodhaven, Richmond Hill area. I've been a member of the Bedford-Stuyvesant Volunteer Ambulance Corp for approximately 21 years, and I've had the pleasure to work with the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Services on numerous occasions. They show nothing but courtesy and respect to the community, and they also provide a magnificent service. So I'm definitely in support of it for the expansion into Woodhaven, Richmond Hills.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Pointer. Did any members of the committee or the council have questions for Mr. Pointer? All right. Seeing none. Joe, any indicated on your end?
Negative.
No. All right. Thank you, Mr. Pointer. Next, Martin Kolberg, Woodhaven Business Improvement District.
Good evening, everyone. First, thank you for the time to be able to speak for the Woodhaven bid in tremendous support for the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps. We believe there's a huge need in the community for an ambulance corps, especially since the service was provided years ago. A very important service to the community. Along the business district, there's at least somewhere between a little over 200 storefronts on the avenue that span between one area of Jamaica to another, one area of Woodhaven to another. So that, has a lot of foot traffic, a lot of customers that are going up and down the avenue, a lot of residents that live on the avenue. With the change in our demographics, in our city, we've also seen an increase of residents in our community. So having a volunteer ambulance corps will definitely bring a huge improvement into our community. Again, having one in the past, we still have a lot of community members who knows what it feels like to have that special relationship with a volunteer ambulance corps. Where you feel there's more of a one-on-one connection, where you feel more comfortable getting the service provided from a volunteer ambulance corps. So again, the Woodhaven bid definitely supports the expansion of Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps into our area, and hopefully we look forward to having that coverage.
Thank you, Mr. Kolberg. Do any members of the ambulance committee or the council have any questions for Mr. Kolberg?
None have come into me.
Okay, thank you. You beat me to it, Joe. Good. Mr. Kolberg, I was going to ask a follow-up question. You began your comments by stating that there's a huge need that exists now. Was there any difference that you noticed between the time that the former Woodhaven Richmond Hill ambulance operated there and then ceased operations through now that indicates that there is a public need that exists presently in that area?
Yes, and I can definitely see the difference as well, because in the past I was the past president of the Woodhaven Residents Block Association, and then I'm actively still a board member. So I'm very involved with residents and constantly in communication with them, where we can see the difference when we did have the volunteer ambulance corps, as far as response time, and again the level of comfort of for some of our residents to be able to have that close connection with the individuals of a volunteer ambulance corps coming to service them.
Have there been any discussions at the block association or among businesses that you serve where the topic of ambulance service or availability of ambulance service has arisen?
So I know for community conversations with the block association they have, as far as with the bid, I'm really not involved in the day-to-day too much. Our executive director is more involved in the day-to-day, but definitely throughout the block association, which I know Steve Forte is on, he can speak more on that. But we definitely have always had conversations about that, and we're always speaking about the Woodhaven Volunteer Ambulance Corps, how we wish it was still around, and how can we actively work with anyone, especially Ridgewood, because they've been so transparent, and we understand they've been having conversations with the board of directors for Woodhaven Ambulance Corps, to see how we can get to the point where this can be come back to our community. And again, being that this community has expanded in volume of the amount of residents that we have, there's a big importance for it, big need.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Kolberg. Any other questions for Mr. Kolberg? Seeing none. Joe, any on your side?
No.
Nope. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kolberg. We'll next go to Stephen Forte from the Woodhaven Residents Block Association. Joe, is Mr. Forte on? I'm not seeing him.
I'm not seeing him in the room. We have Scott Orlansky, who's a committee member who would like to submit a question.
Okay, he can do that.
Scott,
Good. Am I allowed to speak now?
Absolutely, Mr. Orlansky, go right ahead.
First of all, call me Scott, and good evening. Thank you. I'm actually going to direct the question at you, Hearing Officer Hannigan, to see if it's a permissible question, and if it's not, then I take no offense in you telling me that it should not be answered. We all know what's before us, and we're going to hear statements in support and statements against all evening long, which are very, very important to determine public need. I guess the question that we have before us is, and if permitted to ask the question, I will ask the same question tonight that I will ask on Thursday night of the other core. But I'm going to assume, and maybe I'm wrong, that we're going to hear statements in support and against both tonight and Thursday night. I guess ultimately the question comes down to, as part of public need, is, and am I permitted to ask from Mr. Mahoney or others in support, what does Ridgewood bring to covering the area that another service would not be able to bring? So, Mr. Hannigan, I don't know if that's a permissible question based at, but I leave that to you.
I think that's fair. If you want to ask, I'm not sure how many of the prior speakers are present. If you want to ask it globally, and they can indicate to Joe whether they'd like to answer, and then
I guess we have Mr. Mahoney, who speaks in support, who's the application presenter, ask the question again with the understanding that I'm just trying to get, and I will ask the same question on Thursday night. Mm-hmm. What do you bring to the table that Forest Hills doesn't, and what does Forest Hills bring to the table that you don't?
I think that with respect to the question for Mr. Mahoney, what I would do is we'll move through the public hearing session first. So if anybody in the public hearing comment section wants to answer, I think we ask them, and then when we get to the rebuttal time, you can pose that to Mr. Mahoney to start rebuttal time if needed, and then he can comment on anything else.
Fair.
That will allow us to move to the hearing, if that's all right with you, sir. That's
sure.
Okay. So do you want to, with respect to any members of the public that either already spoke or would like to speak? I know we had several community leadership present. Does anybody care to comment on Mr. Orlansky's question regarding what does Ridgewood bring as opposed to another entity?
Yeah, this is Vance Barber. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, the only thing I would mention, and correct me, Kevin and others on the line if I'm wrong, is I do believe that in the orbit of the existing Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps, we have Andrew Combs, who's very familiar with our community and has been on the board of the Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps in the past. And we also have Sean Graves, who's quite familiar with the community. There's a lot of nuances to the community. The existing board, of what's left of it, the non-operational board, it's a part of the fabric of the community. So that might be something that doesn't have dollar value to it, but it has tangible value. I'll reserve my other comments for when it's my time.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Anyone else care to respond to Mr. Orlansky's question?
I would just, if I may, continue on what was just said. As past president of GVAC, we had a working relationship with Woodhaven, and it's not to say that another service couldn't offer a valuable service. I just feel that with the current membership of Ridgewood and the support that we have and the membership that it has, that already has a foundation in the community of Woodhaven, I feel that they have a better opportunity to serve that community in that public area and that need.
Thank you. And for the transcript purposes, that was Ryan Gunning who just spoke. Anyone else like to comment? Mr. Orlansky's question. Mr. Combs?
Yes, I'd like to add my voice to that. That I believe that the Ridgewood VAC is the one best able to provide that service, and I say that recognizing that any certified ambulance service in a theoretical sense can provide ambulance service to any other given area. The issue here is that this proposal, this unified group of ambulance corps who have banded together to provide service is a strong one, that it has the support of all of the people who are the people who are intimately involved in the areas in which we previously worked, that we are proposing to move forward to hopefully expand service back into the area previously serviced by the ambulance corps, to not have it parceled out or broken apart, but that it move forward in its totality. That I think of all of the organizations that would best be able to, honor the legacy of the past and to help in provision of service in the future, is our organization, and as I said before, the monies that have been set aside, which come from all of the communities we previously served, will remain with us and be put to use, hopefully when this is approved. And so, without disparaging the abilities of any other neighboring ambulance corps, I think this application and our support of it, our joining with them, and the strength of the application of the people that indicated their support for this, make it the best choice. Not the only choice, but the best choice.
Thank you. I think my question was answered.
All right, very good. Thank you. Has Mr. Forte signed on yet?
No, he is not.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Barber. You are up now. Vance Barber, if you'd like to speak. I'm a community member.
Oh, that wasn't long. Actually, when I registered, I also made it known that I am a director, a board member of the Woodhaven Residents Block Association, who works with Steve Forte in that capacity, and Martin Kolberg. So I can sort of talk on behalf of the Block Association. I would just point out that the existing Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps has been a part of our community for, as it's been mentioned before, well over 50 years. And it's not some isolated part. They participate in all of the community events that we've done. I have been a member of this community, Woodhaven, for 34 years. I've been a member of the Block Association for 16 years. I was a former president of the Block Association, and I currently am a director. And in all my time, we've worked with the Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps. So it's my feeling that I trust the people who, some of them are still left from that organization. I trust them to make the right decision in choosing the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps. As far as need goes, yes, there is definitely a need. This community has been hit hard by COVID. The numbers support that. I will also mention, from a statistical standpoint, in the last 20 years, the number of people in our community has more than doubled. We have issues related to overcrowding because of illegal conversions, things that the city has not really addressed. But there are people here that still need to be attended to. I can say personally that on the night that one of our dear law enforcement officers was shot and killed in the 102nd precinct, that night I had a medical emergency where I needed to call an ambulance to take me to the hospital. And with all of the ambulances going to the site on Atlantic Avenue and 102nd Street, I had to wait and my life was in jeopardy at that time. So is there a need for that? Yes, there is. I would also say that in addition to the goodwill and the the financial help that the community has given to the former Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps, we've also made them part of our family. So whomever we work with, whomever you choose, and I hope you do choose the the Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps, they will be part of the fabric of that community going forward. And as the former Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Company did, is they would take their ambulance in and be part of the community in all of our events. They would be there working and supporting the community as a whole. So I hope you make the right choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Are there any questions from the ambulance committee or members of the regional council for Mr. Barber? Seeing none, Joe, any questions indicated on your end?
Negative.
Okay. All right. We'll next go to Antoine Robinson.
I'm here, gentlemen. Excuse me for that.
Good evening, Mr. Robinson. No problem. You can proceed, sir.
All right. So we've been at the Bedford-Stuyvesant Volunteer Ambulance Corps working with Ridgewood for a number of years. And we all know as volunteers, it's been very difficult just to maintain our organization. Not just Bed-Stuy, but all over the city. If Ridgewood is looking to expand, that means they can provide a lot more care for the citizens of their city, a lot better than a lot of volunteer ambulance services. And not to mention, we already know Kevin has tons of EMTs that he has graduated through his organization. And it's so hard to maintain experienced personnel just to volunteer, and they're able to do so. There's no reason why we should even stop it. I don't even know why we have a debate about it, or why it even have to come to a committee, whereas all of our volunteer organizations should just all come together, and because we all have the same purpose. So there's no way possible that my organization, whatever hindrance and expansion and saving lives of people of this community or of this city or even of this nation. I mean, we could beat a dead horse, gentlemen, but it should be more unified. Or we all working together to achieve the same goal.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Do any members of the ambulance committee have any questions, or by extension, any members of the regional council have any questions for Mr. Robinson? I'm seeing none. Joe, any indicated from your seat?
Negative.
All right, then we will proceed with the presentation by Mr. Christopher DeLuca, Chief, Lindenwood Volunteer Ambulance Corps.
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, as which was addressed in Mr. Mahoney's opening remarks, our only point of contention is the map they've submitted with this application overlaps a significant chunk of our area that we already serve. It's not about a border war. We've had mutual aid agreements with the prior existing Woodhaven management in the past, and we generally work well with all our neighbors. But an application that's going to expand into an area that we already serve is problematic for my organization, and that's our point of contention. If this can't be resolved or clarified, and I don't mean way at the end of the process where we're not sure it'll be clarified, my organization has no choice but to oppose this application. And as far as need, we're already serving part of that area if that map is going to stand. Of course, if the map is revised, there's no issue on our behalf, and we'd be willing to work with whoever the council selects on this subject as we have in the past.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Are there any questions from members of the ambulance committee or the council for Mr. DeLuca? I'm seeing none. Joe, any questions indicated on your end?
No questions on my end.
Okay.
Mr. Hannigan, I got a question for him.
Yeah, I had a question also.
Oh, hold on. So remember.
Andy, I have it. Andy, I got it. Mr. Hannigan, I got a question. I don't think.
Yeah, hold on. Allow the hearing officer to acknowledge.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, so I can, Kevin, Mr. Mahoney, I will ask the questions. The applicant has an opportunity to respond in rebuttal, so you don't have an opportunity to ask questions of members of the public at this time. You can respond thereafter. Mr. Combs, similarly, because you are a member of the public as opposed to a sitting member of the council or committee, you can't ask questions. Mr. Mahoney can respond to any comments made. So with that said, do any members of the ambulance committee or the council, regional council, have any questions for Mr. DeLuca? All right, hearing none, Mr. DeLuca, I did have one question for you. The subject of the map, as you indicated, was stated earlier by Mr. Downey. Mr. Mahoney provided an explanation that stated they do not intend to encroach upon or have operating authority for that area indicated. Did his answer to Mr. Downey's question resolve your issue, or is that the thrust of your question and objection?
Well, as long as that's followed through on, yes, it does absolutely resolve our issue. But
Okay.
Promises or discussions about it will not resolve our issue. So
Okay.
as I said, unless that's clarified and we're given assurances of that clarification, then we'll continue with our opposition. If the clarification stands and it's resolved, we have no other reason to oppose this application.
Okay, very good. Mr. DeLuca, if I may, with respect to the area indicated on the map that does not include response area or operating authority that overlaps yours. So every area on the map, excluding the area that your agency has operating authority for. Do you have any opinion as to whether public need exists in the area, excluding the area that your agency presently covers?
As far as a need, yes, a need does exist, and one ambulance may not be enough. You should even consider multiple. It is an area, it has a growing population, as most of the guests have already stated, and I can only answer in the affirmative to that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. Do any members of the ambulance committee or the council have any questions in follow-up to Mr. DeLuca? Seeing none.
Questions on my end, Tim.
Okay, thank you, Joe. All right, we'll proceed with comments from Attorney Jeffrey Reisner for Forest Hills Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Mr. Reisner, are you on? Yep, I see him here.
Jeff, are you muted?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Joe,
Looks
can
like
you
you're still
unmute
muted.
Mr. Reisner?
I'm sending him things asking him to unmute
Okay.
his microphone,
Okay,
but I cannot unmute him for him.
okay.
Jeff, if you're having issues with the getting yourself unmuted, you can send me a message in the chat as well. So we can provide assistance.
He can also call in by phone if he's having problems.
Marie, why don't you check in with Jeff, and then Tim can follow back with him as the following speaker.
Okay, so at this time, Mr. Reisner is the last, as luck would have it, the last.
Can you hear me?
Hey, there he is. All right.
All right, finally. I'm sorry. The Windows 10 gremlins are attacking my laptop. I couldn't get my mouse to actually go to the mute button. I do apologize. I'm probably going to lose the display again, but I've maintained audio, so I've been able to hear everything you've said. Hopefully, you'll be able to maintain hearing what I say and be able to see me.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear now.
First, I'd like to start by saying thank you to the members of the committee and the members of the council for being here tonight, along with huge thanks to Marie, who doesn't get enough credit for all she goes through in putting all of these together. I'm here today on behalf of Forest Hills Volunteer Ambulance Corps, who, as many of you know, has filed a competing application with Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps for this same territory. And I have submitted a written opposition, and I will defer to that in large part, but I do want to bring a couple of points out in a supplement to that submission. Most notably, something that needs to be accounted for is what the hearing officer, and thank you for doing this, Mr. Hannigan, the committee and the council are able to consider in determining whether there is in fact a need. The definition of need was read at the outset of the hearing, and in making the determination as to whether that need exists, there are a series of variables that are up for consideration. The two that fit here are A, quality of the applicant's existing service, and B, other local factors. And I think that everything in my written submission, along with everything I'm going to say tonight, applies to those two variables and therefore is appropriate, despite the fact that at the time 0606 was drafted, I don't believe that this type of situation was envisioned. That being said, as you all know, whether there is a need is the progeny of Article 30 and 0606, and issues with respect to NYC Part 800 come into play as well when we're talking about quality of applicants' existing services. And other local factors in this particular instance, I submit, do include violations of not-for-profit corporation law sections 904 and 907. And those two sections of the not-for-profit corporation law go to mergers of not-for-profit corporations. And we have heard on numerous occasions from the applicant itself this evening, along with a number of other organizations, including the now defunct Woodhaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps, which had its certificate revoked, that the applicant has merged. However, I have conducted an exhaustive search, as exhaustive as I can, of the Attorney General's records on this issue, which are made public. And I find no Attorney General approval as required by Section 907 of the Not-for-Profit Corporation Law, and no certificate of merger having been filed as required by Section 904 of the Not-for-Profit Law. Therefore, and that's the case with respect to Glendale, that's the case with respect to Middle Village, and it's the case with respect to Woodhaven Richmond Hill. Therefore, I submit that all of those mergers were in fact illegal. And I think the argument could certainly be made that every single action that has been taken by Ridgewood in respect to those mergers is void. And I think that the council needs to look at things like this, because if you've got an agency that is taking action like that, doing things illegally, and is, for all intents and purposes, likely to be subjected to Department of Health and/or Attorney General scrutiny and potentially enforcement proceedings and potentially revocation of a certificate for doing illegal activities, it would be imprudent to grant such an agency an expansion of territory. Granting an agency that is going to be staring down the barrel of things like that, an expansion of territory, is just signing the citizenry of those areas up to be left without their ambulance once again. And I don't think that that's prudent for the council, and I would submit that the council should take a close look at that. And therein lies the rub. Because the applicant has not submitted this memorandum of understanding that's been mentioned at least 3 times that it allegedly has with Woodhaven Richmond Hill, that's not been submitted as part of the application. And I don't know how the committee, the council, or the hearing officer can make an informed decision when these crucial facts are left out of the application. I've submitted as an exhibit to my written opposition a copy of the Woodhaven Richmond Hills most recently filed Char 500 form, which shows that they have $650,000 in escrow per their agreement with the Attorney General's office. I note that page 16 of the application references the memorandum of understanding, and that the applicant is getting financial commitments and contributions from Woodhaven Richmond Hill. Woodhaven Richmond Hill's own Mr. Combs said that they had no money aside from the sale of that property. And they're somehow making financial contributions when they don't have a certificate of need, rendering them able to run an ambulance. I don't know how they're generating revenue. And I think that's a big red flag, and it's a big deal that's been left out of the application and that the council cannot consider. And I think that it would be highly, highly imprudent for the council to grant this application based on those factors. What's more, I've submitted evidence showing that there is at least one truck running in violation of Part 800 because it's got an expired registration. And I've submitted evidence that there is at least one individual in a leadership position within the applicant who is committing a crime of misrepresenting himself as an EMT in violation of the penal law. This goes to fitness and competency. I understand that this is an expansion, not an initial application, and fitness and competency statutorily isn't necessarily in play. However, I would submit that there is likely a reason that the department's recommendation letter on fitness and competency has not come down. I do know that because I'm the one who filed it, that a complaint has been filed alleging that these problems should be investigated by the department and then enforcement proceedings should be brought at a minimum. I would submit that the hearing officer's report, the ambulance committee's findings and motion, and the REMSCO's recommendations all should be to deny this application. There is no need that my client Forest Hills cannot meet. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Reisner. Are there any questions from the ambulance committee or council members for Mr. Reisner?
Nothing on my end, Tim.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Mr. Reisner, I wanted to follow up on your comments. You indicated there, you mentioned there's expired registration, there's an alleged misrepresentation that someone is an EMT. With respect to that representation that someone has affirmatively stated they are a certified EMT and they're not, is that one of the officers or directors of the applicant that has made that indication?
It's a captain. I do not believe it's an officer or director.
Okay. With respect to the items that you've raised relative to not-for-profit law compliance, do you have anything? And I noted that your submission is an exhibit and will be incorporated into this proceeding by reference. But do you have anything in writing from the Attorney General or from the Secretary of State's office relative to the corporate status of the applicant Ridgewood Volunteer Ambulance Corps, whether it's inactive or hasn't filed something or is under investigation, under suspension, anything with respect to its not-for-profit compliance at this time?
Nothing with respect to the fact that is not under that it's under investigation or anything like that. Nothing like that. I have submitted as exhibits to my submission a recitation of a communication I have with the Attorney General's office via an email, along with screenshots of each of the undertakings with each entity's filing records from the Charities Bureau's website.
Okay. And then I guess backing up more broadly, is it your contention that these factors, the items of objection that you've indicated, sound in the applicant's fitness and competency?
Broadly, yes. I think it also goes to quality of service, and
Okay.
quality of service being stated broadly, the quality of the service, meaning the ambulance service or the company as a whole. And frankly, its ability to continue to operate without facing enforcement and potentially revocation proceedings.
Okay. With respect to, you indicated that you filed a complaint against the applicant relative to the information that you found. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you know whether at this time, whether the Department of Health has commenced any investigation into the applicant at this juncture?
I've been advised that they are looking into it, but that they've got a lot bigger fish to fry at this point, and that they were not able to get anything to you or to me in time for tonight's hearing.
Okay. On that, did they make you aware of any statement of deficiency in existence or anything like that that's been transmitted to the applicant at this time?
No, I don't believe anything has been transmitted to the applicant.
Okay. Can you advise, what was the date the complaint was filed with the Department of Health?
I'm looking at, it's Exhibit A, to my submission. It was February 1st. And it was just via email to the operations division of the Bureau.
Okay. Was that in Albany, or was that a regional rep?
Albany.
Okay. Okay. Those are all the questions I have for you, sir. Let me ask the committee again and the council. Do any members of the ambulance committee or the regional council have any questions for Attorney Reisner? All right, I'm seeing none. Joe, any on your end?
No questions from the committee or council. The applicant did submit a request to ask a question. I leave to your discretion.
Okay. So there being no questions from the council or the committee, Mr. Reisner, I thank you. Marie, do you have a comment?
I just wanted, Marie DiGlio, I
Yes.
just wanted to state for the record that all the exhibits from Mr. Reisner were emailed to the hearing officer and to all the members of the regional council. That's it, just for their information.
Very good. Yes, thank you, Marie. Mr. Reisner, I have no more questions for you, neither do any members of the committee or the council. With that, I will close the public comment portion of the hearing. Mr. Mahoney, this is the period of time for rebuttal on behalf of the applicant. The purpose of this time is to rebut any statements made in opposition to your application. As a preliminary matter, I would note that I told Mr. Orlansky that I would allow you to respond to his question that he posed earlier in the proceeding. At this time, Mr. Orlansky, if you're still on, if you want to pose that question to Mr. Mahoney and then allow him the opportunity to speak to rebuttal issues, I would allow that at this time.
Absolutely, thank you, and I apologize for being in the car. I just needed to go to another meeting. So my question was just from a practical perspective, without disparaging the other applicant for the same space or anybody else. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on why your organization is more or better suited to take over the area that is in question.
As described in my opening statement, this has been a collaborative effort to merge operations amongst 4 different agencies and work together as a team to create one agency and have resources being pushed out together. With that being said, I will say if you review our application, I believe our application speaks on its own merit. The community support we have, the government support we have, and it shows the public need with everybody who came on today.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Mr. Orlansky. Mr. Mahoney, if you now want to comment with respect to any opposition that was voiced in opposition to your application, I note that That opposition was received from Mr. Christopher DeLuca, the chief of Lindenwood, relative to the map, and more recently by Attorney Jeff Reisner with respect to certain not-for-profit and other compliance or fitness and competency issues.
Yes, first I just have a question from Mr. DeLuca from the Lindenwood Volunteer Ambulance Corps. And I know you touched on this here in Officer Hannigan, but I just wanted to clarify again that the only contention is the overlapping of areas, and you have no other problem with any part of our application.
That is correct, Mr. Mahoney. That's correct, as we stated earlier. This is our only real point of contention. Everything else is about a need, and filling this void is quite important. As everybody who spoke tonight mentioned, I have no argument with that. I do have a couple of concerns separately, which we could discuss otherwise. It just surprised me that every time Mr. Combs spoke tonight, it was about unlocking money. Otherwise, everything else, a need is a need, and I have no contention with that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And
Mr. Mahoney, go right ahead.
And just to put it on the record, we're not against having a clarification of the territory to make sure that what we're expanding into does not overlap with Mr. DeLuca and Lindenwood Volunteer Ambulance Corps, just to put that on the record. So just to continue to address everybody today, New York State Policy Statement 0606, page 5, paragraph 6 specifically states, the complete application is the basis for the demonstration of need. In the public hearing, the applicant may be restricted to collaborating and or explaining the data therein. There was new information that was presented today about 15 minutes before this hearing started. I was able to look through some of it, and quite frankly, some of this stuff is quite misleading just to paint the picture that really doesn't exist. Everybody, there's been talks about an MOU. We have a binding legal agreement, memorandum of understanding with the Whitehaven Richmond Hill Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Part of that agreement requires us to expand our services to try to regain and restore community-based volunteer ambulance services to the Woodhaven, Richmond Hill, and Kew Garden areas. I was able to review a little bit of the opposition, and on page 4, Mr. Reisner, Exhibit J, which is actually shared as Exhibit I on the drive, you make an accusation that one of our officers is wearing an illegal patch. I'm going to hold this up here. Can you tell me what it says on that patch, Mr. Reisner, from this picture?
So Mr. Mahoney, hold on one second. So at this point, you're permitted to respond. You cannot ask questions of others. Yours is a presentation to the committee and the council. You can ask rhetorical questions, but I ask you to do so cordially, and I do not anticipate, nor will I otherwise permit Mr. Reisner to comment or question at this time.
Okay.
This period of time is solely for you to respond to what occurred during the context of the public hearing, to reinforce points you stated regarding public need and respond to any opposition that was made.
All right. With that being said, once again, this hearing is about the determination of public need, not competency and fitness of the organization. That's determined by the New York State Department of Health. We have right now no notice of violations, no notice of any investigations, no communications with any authority that oversees volunteer ambulance corps, EMS agencies, non-for-profit corporations at all. We have no statement of deficiencies. So I ask the council to please follow the guideline of 0606 and make their determination based off of our application. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members of the ambulance committee or the regional council have any final questions for Mr. Mahoney? I just asked if they had any questions for you, sir. Let me see if they do.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, Joe. I'm not seeing any.
I do not see any questions. Final ask, if any members of the committee or the council have any questions, you may unmute yourself and express them or send them in the chat.
Okay, Joe, while we wait for that opportunity, Mr. Mahoney, I just wanted to clarify, you mentioned something in rebuttal regarding a binding MOU that your organization has with Woodhaven, Richmond Hill. Is that been approved by or reviewed or subject to approval by the Attorney General's office?
It's a binding agreement between two corporations, not subject to approval by the Attorney General's office.
Okay, thank you. Joe, any questions indicated by council or committee members?
Negative.
All right, very good. The time is now 7:45 p.m. The record is now closed. There will be a transcript made of this proceeding, and I will prepare my report and submit it to the ambulance committee. The ambulance committee will meet and make a recommendation as to the regional council as to whether the application for expansion should be approved. The next council meeting will be on March 23rd, 2021. The ambulance committee meeting and the council meeting schedules are located at the regional council's website, nycremsco.org. There being no further business before the committee, I adjourn the hearing, and I thank all of the members of the public, including the elected officials and community members that spoke. Thank you very much. And my thanks to the applicant and Attorney Reisner as well.
Well, thank you very much for for everybody coming tonight. And we look forward to your report. Mr. Hannigan, thank you for a nicely done public hearing. And we're actually done at a reasonable time. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.